You knock out the door, and with my pigeons, you know it's it has to roll. And the fine and current story, they might say to see. Just like a phonetic guitar, cause mine runs deep.
Something nasty is very likely to happen to the world, or at least to its most economically advanced and therefore vulnerable parts. It is also likely to happen rather sooner than later. In fact, it is likely to happen within the next few years. What makes me say that? Is it an intuition or I'm delusional? Neither of these actually. It is a pure logic. One kind of a logic that would apply to the forthcoming based on current behavioral models. We are in times of major disruption and turbulence at virtually every level of the global economic and social landscape. Humans and their structures can withstand huge amounts of stress and disruption, but there is always a cost. Let's use the example of a production cycle. It takes at least a year to plan, and then another year to assess the project that you're working on, and then to secure investments. Depending on the scale of the project, it takes a couple of years to reach to the point at which industrial capacity is built, production begins, and the return on the investment starts. Therefore, depending on the economic niche, it takes roughly 4 to 7 years for an industrial project to get off the ground. Then, more time is needed to establish stable commercial environment and supply chains and to reach a stable state. Well, and this is without even considering the extremely complex, interconnected and globally dependent structure of current industrial processes. Predictability is essential for economic activity. It takes decades for a society to start benefiting from economic decisions and investments, and after developing a specific market niches. Society also needs time to adapt and create a stable social environment. It is safe to say that it takes one generation for an economy to make significant progress. However, it only takes few years to change the current economic, political and social environment and destroy the status quo. The world we live in is going through major forced upheavals that are unjustified, and they could have been avoided. There are specific decisions that we can point to, but what I have learned from studying social reality and human history is that pointing fingers is an easy and usually false answer to current problems. So, anyone unhappy with the current economic and political trends can easily put the blame on President Trump, on America, on the MAGA movement, on the Trump himself for bringing America and the world from a relatively stable economic and social condition to a state of permanent uncertainty. The current global economic and social conditions are in a state of serious distress. We are well beyond the disruption that President Trump has brought to America and the world affairs in his first term in office. Again, I'm not mentioning this to blame on Trump, MAGA movement, or Republicans. Why? Why? And this is very important. The decisions made by those in power usually influence the national and often international status quo. However, social transformation is a process and it has a historical timeline. Economic, political, and international agendas do not change overnight, nor can they be influenced by an individual, just one, no matter how powerful they are. And no matter how powerful these people are, presidents or whoever they are, it doesn't happen just like that, overnight. Let's talk by example. It took Alexander the Great many years to prepare his war of conquest. It took few generations for the Roman Empire to start losing its influence and fall apart. It took Hitler 5 or 6 years to transform Germany into a Nazi regime. It took Putin's regime 8 years to prepare and transform Russia into a war machine and start waging wars. The Clinton administration created global economic and geopolitical conditions that made the world and America less secure. The Bush administration performed poorly in Eastern Europe and in the Middle East. Then, the Obama administration proved weak and ineffective in its foreign policy, particularly in Eastern Europe and, again, in the Middle East. So, it's not surprising that a political leader who has never prepared himself for the complexities of international relations would follow the same pattern. This may not serve as an excuse for the President Trump and the MAGA movement, however. Major economic or political changes always come at cost. Looking at political history, particularly that of Western governments, when you look at that, we're going to see that changes have always resulted in years or even decades of uncertainty and unrest. Any government that plans to make significant changes to the current political and economic system would better plan them very carefully and execute them very carefully, rather than through disruptive measures. This is because the world is extremely complex and interconnected. Disruptive policies would most certainly trigger a long period of economic, social, and political insecurity on a global scale. Politicians need to account for that. At the same time, some of the ruling political elites view the economies and the global affairs through the lens of the late 19th century or early 20th century. In my book, The New American State, published in 2020, I warned that it is absurdly foolish to suggest that America, a nation created from a blend of all of the world's ethnicities, cultures, and races, would pursue a policy of nationalism. The same can be said of the current European Union as a supranational polity and of most of its member states, respectively. Changing national priorities and immigration laws is an exclusive prerogative of the national government, and it can be criticized but not rejected. At the same time, any policy changes should be introduced transparently without interrupting routine economic processes or people's lives. If we view the planet as a highly complex natural structure, we can logically conclude that disrupting a natural or human ecosystem will have complex implications for everyone. This is what happened with the AI bubble. Yes, this is what happened with the AI bubble. Ever since investors became obsessed with AI in 2022, somewhere at that time, I have said that the AI rush, like a gold rush, is a manifestation of human stupidity that will have major consequences. Now, in Q4 of 2025 and Q1 of 2026, US tech stocks were hit by a wave of selling due to concerns about the impact of AI on software businesses. All the industrial software in use now, as of 2026, is based on years, if not decades, of steady development and evolution within the software automation industry. The shrinking market valuation of software companies could result in significant disruption to industrial workflows or higher costs for the software automation. Even producers of central processing units, CPUs, and graphics processing units, GPUs, who were expected to benefit significantly from investments in AI projects and data centers, saw a decrease in value of their stocks. It is quite a paradox, isn't it? NVIDIA chief executive Jensen Huang said there is this notion that the software industry is in decline and will be replaced by AI. But what is AI? It is a form of software automation that can perform tasks such as learning, reasoning, problem solving, and decision making, which previously required human intelligence. Developing AI technologies requires significant human effort, not just computers powered by GPUs. Therefore, if the value of software companies decreases, the AI industry itself may eventually be affected. The idea that AI will eliminate most software automation companies is a relatively new narrative in the history of AI. It is just another example of short-sighted thinking, of carelessness, and it shows how unprepared we are when we start making predictions and projections about the future. One thing is worth mentioning when it comes to predictions. The business of predictions is profoundly corrupt. It is based on media access for interested parties who are given the opportunity to speak publicly about their areas of interest, but mostly in their own favor. This is how nasty things happen. Our public institutions are often taken over by arrogant, egocentric, and short-sighted people who lack the intelligence to govern in today's highly complex world. Once the delicate balance of any niche of the economy or its fundamentals is destroyed, major social disturbances result. In an interconnected world, this creates major tensions between nation-states. The next step would be for the complex structures of multinational production cycles to start falling apart. If this happens, it is unlikely that similar multinational structures or national structures established in one nation-state or in few countries would replace what was broken. It is improbable that entire industrial ecosystems would simply fall apart. However, this is not impossible, and it's not unlikely. A politics of disruption does not initiate a creative process. It only leads to more disruption. This cycle continues until the disrupted economic, political, or social structure collapses. A collapse is usually followed by a long period of structural decay before people can reorganize and begin a new creative process. It really feels like that something nasty is about to happen. While there is no necessity in history, nothing is inevitable either. As long as there is a group of people who want to change a negative trend, change is not just likely, it is almost certain to happen.